Okay, I think we're going to get started. Thank you very much for joining us. Just to let you know, this session will be in both English and Spanish. So channel one is Spanish, channel two is English. So today, well, the last 2 days, we've had a conference on increasing access to arts, sports, leisure, culture. And one of the key messages was about having representation and visibility of people with disabilities to promote inclusion. And for that, media is a critical partner. And linked to this, we have the SIMS project. So that's the Sport Inclusion Media Seal project, which aims to enhance the dissemination of activities which promote social inclusion and diversity in sport. One of the main elements of the project is a training which equips journalists and media entities with the skills to be able to cover sports activities more inclusively. And it also has a certification or a seal which recognizes journalists and media entities for their work to promote such activities. So the project is coming to an end, and we're very happy to be here now in Gandía to talk a little bit more about how organizations working on inclusive sports and also media journalists can work together to promote diversity and inclusion. And so I'll hand over to Sydney for the panel. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, go right into it. Antonio, you're very involved with rugby and its latest activities.
Well, I'm involved in rugby. I'm enabler. No, voy a hacerlo en castellano.
Okay.
Más fácil, ¿verdad?
I will speak Spanish. I will speak Spanish, yes. My English is not so good, so. I am part of the rugby team called El Clan. It is a rugby team with Trade Rugby Cullera and the Spurna Foundation, as well as Lassa for rugby team. The idea comes from Scotland, from the Artiles brothers, and they were looking for entities near Cullera that wanted to do inclusive rugby. They went further away from Cullera. They came to us, Spurna, and I said, yes, we could do rugby. And the coincidence is that the members we are now sponsoring, we were rugby players. We had been rugby players. Now we are veterans, let's say. So what we do is that rugby teams place their players or former players, people that don't play anymore, to play and play rugby again. In my case, I left rugby because of a problem of disability, because a colleague of mine became tetraplegic while we were playing, something that never happens, but it happened. So thanks to disability, I've been able to play again. They allow me to play with them, and it is very lucky that we are mixed abilities. That is, I have some abilities, maybe I'm not very fast, but I have some skills to facilitate the game, to play and to facilitate the game for other people with diverse capacities.
Challenging, have you have any experience in raising awareness about your activities and your team through the media?
A ver, el tema de
Rugby is not very popular, such as football or basketball. It's a different kind of activity. And the fact that it is inclusive doesn't make us very, very famous. But from time to time, well, we have a rugby team. We train every 2 weeks, more or less, but now they are starting practicing every week. But it appears in the media like an event I have an event, I've been able to gather many people for one day. Is it important? Maybe because you have informed the press that you were going to do that, but practice is the usual thing. That's what we were talking before. What you do every day, even if you hit a record, it is not so important. So they treat us more or less the same. We've been present very, very little.
You have to kind of approach them.
No, yo creo que es que cada vez más con la prensa
No, more and more with the press and sport, you have to generate the news for the press. You have to create it and you send news to them. And if they are interested, they publish it.
They are not interested rather than they are.
yo creo que están menos interesados.
They are less interested rather than more interested. And you say this in front of me, to my face. You are more interested, but why? Why are you more interested? But maybe you should talk about your track record in Spanish, please. Can you tell us some words about you, about your work? I've been working for 20 years in the media. Now I work in Radio Marca in Gandía. Before I worked for Radio Ser and Las Provincias. Personally, I am sports trainer for the Spurna Foundation. So I have direct access to this information and special sensitivity for adapted sport. I am very lucky to live in a city like Gandía. Here we have an example. It's a city of great Paralympic champions. Hector has been in 3 Paralympic Games, Paris, Tokyo, Rio, but also Kim Lopez is here. Mia Martinez, his trainer is a top trainer from Gandía, also for Paralympic Games, as well as for track sports without disability. So I play with an advantage and I have the access possibility. But what Tony said before, he's completely right. So news, not only about inclusive sport, reach the media, the same problem that inclusive sport is shared by minority sports. It's the same complaint. They don't pay attention because the media, what we need is not to pay attention. What we need is an audience. If I give fantastic information, but no one reads me, no one sees me, I am not doing a favor to the source of the news or myself. He has given a key. First, from the associations, the news should be created, sent to the media. Now, current journalism doesn't go to giving objective information, but rather subjective stories. That is not the records, but the most important thing is Hector's life. What he did during the pandemic to train at home, the book that he has written because of his visual problems, rather than launching javelin 60 meters away. So what I would suggest is to pay attention to communicate what your sports people do and create links with the press they want to reach, either local, provincial, or national. So you have a personal connection. Yes, I am afraid I have. If you have to follow up your news. As I am taking the position of the sports person and the association. If you write a a note and send it to the media and you do not follow up, it will never be published. You have to do a follow-up by phone, for example, and you have to convey whatever you want the journalist to convey. You have to transmit your passion. And your colleagues think the same as you do because you have a personal connection, but maybe other journalists do not think the same. Yes, talking about Hector is very easy because he has been Europe champion and world champion. It's very easy talking about him, but they do not open with the news of inclusive sport unless there is a very significant fact. But we do follow up, and sports people are very thankful when they see themselves in a TV program or on the news. And we haven't talked about sponsorships. If there is good communication, there is better access to sponsors. And how can you promote inclusive sport through your work? How do I promote inclusive sport? Well, we do many things in my, for example, in Radio Marca, I was saying at the beginning that there is a space by Ortega every morning with interviews to Paralympic people. And every time I have the excuse to talk about the Volta a Peo, the results of the different teams, beyond the elite that is Hector and Kim, we do it, and we always give a space to inclusive sport. Have you faced challenges in your work promoting inclusive sport? Well, I would like, when we talk about inclusive sport, when we talk about sport with disability, I would like to have more audience, more advertising agencies that want to advertise these events and have an atmosphere to be more profitable. To talk about Paralympic sport, I know that it sounds like materialistic, but we are living in the real world and everything is based on money. So it would be very important for the foundation or the association that has a good brand sponsoring him or her, a good communication agency and professionals that work well with sport. These are the three basic pillars to promote any project. Have you been told, don't do that, don't talk about that? No, never. Never, never. No one told me this is boring or it won't be a success. Of course, you can depend also on the quality of the journalist to make every information more exciting in human terms. Thank you. Hector, in Spanish, yes? I can try in English, but I'd rather talk in Spanish. Can you tell us something about you? Something about you. Yes, something about myself. I don't know. I am handsome, sexy, and I have a disability. No, I am a Paralympic sport player. I teach at high school, and sometimes I pay attention to my wife sometimes. But in general, I like to be a persistent, determined person and live my life, because sometimes we forget. And that's one of the subjects, as Santi said, when you have the three pillars, it is very good to be a sports person. I have had these pillars, not with big sponsors, but on the other hand, social pressure, when you have these pillars, these sponsors, pressure gets very high. And each person is different. But in my case, when there is social pressure in terms of business or people who depend on your results, you stop enjoying sport. And when you stop enjoying it, everything becomes more difficult. From a psychological viewpoint, pressure is very high. That's what I can say about me. I am extrovert. Yeah. Can you tell us about your experience with the press, with journalists? Well, I have had all kinds of experience. I have been very lucky because I have been present in many media, both national and local. I have been very lucky because I live in Gandía, where we have this media that have supported us a lot. And I do not say this because Santi is present, but both Santi and Levante, the journalist is called Talents, we have had a lot of support, always publishing things about us, about our results and our human side. But contrarily to what Santi said, the human side is very good to get into the world of sports. But at a certain point, the disabled sport person, in my experience, also wishes to feel loved or famous because of the result and not because of our condition. Because Hector Cabrera is a sport person with a disability and has done this or that. Hector Cabrera is visually impaired and has done this. Lamine Yamal, we do not talk about him in those terms. Lamine Yamal scores. That's it. And I take advantage of this occasion to claim this. We want people to talk about our results, but as Santi said, the news about the Paralympic athlete makes noise. When I talk with journalists of El País, El Mundo, or ABC, you never see a bad review of someone who does a sport with disability. They always thank you, and they ask you to encourage people to do a sport. And so all those who suffer a disability or an impairment, depression, for example, to have this information, these stories, to leave their home, to do more sport, and step up from 4% of sports people with a disability up to 20, because many people suffer disability, but they stay home because they are afraid of criticisms. Or another invitation that I do is not insist in course groups with a disability, but rather places where the person with disability is hosted, is welcome. I am very cheeky, let's say. I am rather extrovert, and I don't mind about what people think about me. I don't care. And so I introduced myself in a world without disabilities, and this made me grow very quickly. Those who have this charisma, they help to make the sport level grow. And those who suffer disability do not feel excluded, let's say. Very often when you start in a group with disability, you always belong to that small group and you never move on. You never face real life. When I started losing my sight, it was positive to get to know people that were blind, because I know that one day I will be blind. But I know that I will lead a normal life because I have met people who are blind. But then when I have dealt with people without any disability, I was the poor blind boy. And now is Hector Cabrera is here to compete. I am not a poor blind boy, but someone who has the ability to compete with others. So the media, they like that. I am going to get results.
Do you think there are a great deal of athletes on the press who hit the headlines or are on the media? I would say yes, particularly with minority sports. Sometimes you find out there are things out there that you would have never imagined. For instance, in the winter sports championships, I see all of it, because I love sport. And if you read the local newspaper, you get to discover small clubs that qualify for national championships, and they are local, and so you're very happy. And then when you go to the football pitch or the volleyball court, you see that team in a different way. And not Santi, but how could you give us some recommendations to promote inclusive sports not to Santi, obviously, but to us or to sports people and managers? What should they do? Concerning mass media and social media is difficult. You first need to sell the human side to a person rather than his or her sporting performance, but not only for Paralympic sports or inclusive sports. If all sports had a section in which a person with a disability could practice that sport, that would be enough a promotion, if you know what I mean. When I go to track, an athletics track, if I see a person there with just one leg, that to me means, inclusive sport has been promoted there. I think a direct, straightaway example is better a means for promotion than putting together a campaign. I've been in the Paralympic world for many years. A lot of inclusion events have been put together, have been completed. I haven't got the actual data, but I would say that you can do more with a piece of news about Helena Kongost, and she was on TV in relation to a sporting event. That would do more than a great many campaigns. So are advertising and promotion campaigns that important? Or what Santi said earlier is more important, launching a piece of news on D-Day about a particular thing? Yeah, let me explain about Helena Kongos. This morning, Alberto Duran mentioned her and spoke about Helena Kongost, and some people may not know her. Could you explain her case? Yeah, Helena Kongost, Spanish Paralympic sportswoman, Paralympic athlete with many medals. She did not participate in 2 Paralympic Games because she was a mom for, she had 2 kids and she couldn't train. When she resumed her competition activity, she qualified for the games. She was a favorite, actually. But while she was competing, her guide, halfway through her race, had muscle problems, and he fell down. Let me explain properly. Elena Congos is visually impaired, category 12. So she needs a guide. She has less than 5% of her eyesight. So she needs a guide to run along with her in the marathon. A rule in the competition is the fact that you cannot lose the rope. And because she didn't want her guide to fall down, she let go of the rope, of the leash, and then she was disqualified 5 meters away from the finish line, though she got the rope back and then went through the finish line. It is recorded, obviously, because on TV with 20 different cameras, because it is the finish line. So she was disqualified. So, that case, that story, because she did not want the guy to fall over, she was really kind, but the media made a big fuss. They said, she had been taken her medal because she did not comply with the rules. There was a case in Rio, a Japanese athlete, female athlete, on the finish line, tripped over and she fell flat on her face because the rule knew the rules. If he had helped her, she would have been disqualified. Okay, and then she got back on her feet, her nose was bleeding, and they continued the race, and she won a medal, but she was not helped by her guide. So you want to be aware of all the rules in the competition. Yes, but it is paradigmatic, isn't it? The news is not Elena. Well, if she had been awarded a silver medal, her exposure would not have been that big, would it? Obviously, you don't want a tragedy to occur for these pieces of news to be disseminated, but should they happen, they make it to the headlines. It's not fair, is it? It's not fair sports-wise, but we can understand people want, you know what I mean, yeah? Yes, so this piece of news is brutal, isn't it? She was sanctioned because she got rid of the rope, because she wanted to help her guide. Isn't that sports attitude and philosophy more than anything else? In this case, though, she's punished on the basis of such good values, being humane. I don't think this is exclusive to Paralympic sports, though. Could have happened anywhere in any other sports. Yes, in athletics, for instance, an athlete fell off and a person helped him. Nothing happens if that's the case, yeah? It's not punished. That's strange, isn't it? No, in the Paralympic world, or, you help a sports person to reach his or her target, but not with your help if you are a guide. In Barcelona, 1992, in athletics, there was something commonly known as the catapult. Let me explain. Speed racing athletes are sometimes accompanied by pushed by their guides, yeah, the way I've shown you, so that they would go through the finish line. And well, you could see them flying, pushed into the air and then falling flat on their faces. It had to be stopped, of course, because who was running? The guide who did the final launch, athlete launching. It was really dangerous sport. So the rules changed after that. If we went back in time, you know, and nothing would happen, if you helped the sports person, that would happen again. And we don't want that to happen in Paralympic sports or in any sports. Yeah, in Paralympic sports, we want people to be entitled to do sports. One of the advantages in interviewing Hector is the fact that if you have no news, he will give you the news for your television or radio feature, all of it, all of the program, all of the feature. Yes, I did not know about Elena's case. Thank you very much. Or I didn't know you either, Hector. Thank you. Let's move on to Fernando. Can you tell us about SIMS and how the project came about? It's my fault. Battery went flat while I was using it. Project SIMS is framed in the Plus Plus Deporte program. It is intended to get the media to be committed to inclusive sports, particularly following recent crises in which financial departments took over control on big companies. Particularly sports media are highly dependent on revenue. So whether you want it or not, whether you like it or not, I can't find the word, but they're going to focus on the most profitable things. So in Project SIMS, which is actually based in a previous project in 2019, in which we started coverage by media of sporting events in the inclusive sport sphere, well, our starting hypothesis was confirmed. Namely, dissemination is not given sufficiently to inclusive sports. In the program, Jose Manuel González Buesa from Servimedia participated together with my father, and they thought of taking a step further, involving the stakeholders, the journalists and the media. And in Project SIMS, we speak about inclusion and we speak about inclusive journalism for sports. In Spain, we understand that inclusive sports are above all related to sports for people with disabilities. However, we work on a broader concept. Inclusion as a connection, as a relationship. As you said, it's better for them to do their sport with people who have no disabilities because it's a way of improving. And this is also better for society. So when we speak about inclusion, we may be talking about people with disability and without disability. For instance, sports played in families. If you have a child playing a particular sport or practicing a sport with his or her grandparents, it is inclusive. And then the inclusive sports journalism, by the way, we attended the International Sports Journalism Conference. We asked participants there, or they were asked if they were familiar with inclusive sports concepts, and they were not. Very few people, very few journalists were familiar. What was I talking about? Okay, inclusive journalism. Here we want to change the paradigm. In other words, journalism from a different approach. In inclusive journalism, we want to understand that the key to this methodology is covering events that are inclusive per se. But then there is something which is new, to cover projects, events which are by nature non-inclusive, but from an inclusive point of view. Let me give you an example. Madrid, Barcelona, football or basketball, top level sports. What would happen if we cover that game, that match from an inclusive point of view? We could speak about social repercussions with that particular match, or how it is an opportunity for grandparents to go to the stadium with their grandchildren. So that's what we intend. In Project SEAMS, we work with 2 groups. Am I a chatterbox? No, you're not. And in other projects too, which are being developed for the European Commission, you want to work with all the stakeholders, inclusion, journalism. We submitted projects this year in this year's call, and in one of them we work with students and with sports promoters of inclusive sports. We seek these organizations to be further committed, but it is very difficult because obviously, everybody wants the return of the investment. So what we offer in return is social prestige, social recognition with a stamp, the stamp of the European Commission and the prestige, of the project partners. SPED, IFS, the International Sports Press Federation, very, very high level. We also have NAIP, an organization specialized in certification, and TAFISA, the International Organization for Sports for All. So we cover a number of areas. And so the project is intended to give that recognition and give the media that tool. If you are committed to inclusion, you get your certificate or your recognition. And we have different levels of recognition: bronze, silver, gold. And we also want journalists and media to evolve from being sheer communicators to inclusive sports promoters. Being a promoter means taking a step further, covering the event, not just by communicating the event, but by also perhaps organizing a meeting or a conference on inclusive sports, or a sporting event sponsored by Marca, the sports newspaper, for example. And we also work with journalists. Santi said it, and this comes from another project, but I suppose a lot of work could be done with foundations, with other entities, because now things are more democratic. coverage, why anybody could use digital media, digital means to have a greater impact. And that could be recognized too. Or for instance, the Blind People's Association, ONCE, they could do and prepare other contents to foster inclusive sports, yeah? And you can make it really interesting to be able to reach more people. Similarly, the human side to journalism, we want journalists to develop themselves and so that they promote such content from their mass media or whatever their media or their medium is, fostering things from the inside. Perhaps you cannot make strategic decisions, but in Santi's case, you could propose a new feature on your radio station. In Sims, we have come up with that certificate or seal to be awarded to media. And we have also created training modules for journalists, very simple ones. The training is intended to give a great many examples of the working methodology. And we want to take it further in a subsequent project. We're now in the final phase, the final stage of the project. With this session being part of our dissemination, and the final conference will be held in Brussels together with our friends from EASPD. We want to reach policymakers there. And the next step will be in Brussels too, in the meeting after the event, after the final conference. There we will work on the next step, going live, following experimentation with Servimedia, Unideporte, and then that's the idea. Yeah, to finally the first diplomas and stamps or certificates will be handed out. And next year we will go live with this program of certification for individuals like influencers or companies, media companies. Are journalists interested in Sims and covering inclusive sports in their media? Because I don't know if you know, so far there's still a lack of interest in doing a feature or, well, there are a couple of interesting things, and Hector mentioned one. When you speak about a Paralympic athlete, for instance, usually they are introduced as a person who lost a leg instead of underlining their sporting milestones first or achievements. And then, yes, of course, it needs to be combined with their story, their human side. And I thought that the training that I mentioned earlier could include also training on the format. The format needs to be as attractive as possible. You want to reach your readers, your audience on the basis of interesting contents. Otherwise, they are not good. You want to have interesting content. Otherwise, it's not good. So it's not just, you know, the person's story, their sporting achievements. No, it's a mix and it's a lot more. Yes, there are more people now interested in covering these things, but if you visit a journalism college and you ask students, where would you like to work? Marca, us, you know, the big sports newspapers, but there are many other opportunities. Press office for a big organization, for instance, or you could work as a freelancer and do your own streaming, your own feature. It's important to raise awareness about what we said earlier. It's not just doing things from a higher position. If you are in one powerful post, there are many other levels that can do their bit. If you suggest interesting things, for instance, on the occasion of Project Sims, we met up with Gallardo. I don't remember what his position is. Well, he's a big boss in Radio Marca, and he was really happy because he said he wants to promote that aspect from Marca, you know, from the social point of view in the newspaper. So work is needed, bottom up and from top to bottom. And another important thing, you do not only want to do 1, 2, 3 events a year. No, you want to work 7 days a week and throughout the year. Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience?
Buenas tardes.
Hello, hello. Before I ask a question, I would like to say something. Hector, Fernando, Santiago, Tony, you said that disability is first mentioned to generate a piece of news. But I don't quite agree with the fact that that's not positive. I have a hearing impairment, and when I say that I am impaired, that's my sort of visiting card at first, and people want to listen to me, so it is positive. My question is to Hector, because I haven't got a clue. Where do you get the funding from to be a Paralympic sports person? Could you give me an example? Do you have a brand sponsoring you? Or how do you make a living, you know, or where do you get the funding from? Okay, 2 things. Yeah, what you said about disabilities. Yeah, you said you are impaired. Your hearing is impaired. I agree with you. It's fine. If it's part of the way you define yourself, it's absolutely perfect. Yeah, I always introduce myself saying, you know, I am visually impaired. And if you are a Paralympic athlete, it generates engagement with people because a lot of people would identify with you, and that's nice. That's very nice, inclusion-wise. But if you were in my shoes or in the shoes of athletes like me, I've been working for the past 15 years, and I am commonly known as Hector Cabrera, the visually impaired athlete. And I've been playing top level for 15 years, okay? I have quite a few medals in European championships, Paralympic games, but I continue being Hector, the Paralympic athlete. That's what I meant earlier. And how do I make a living? Well, mostly I should say that I never stopped learning and you know, studying. I continue studying. Having said so, at the beginning, when you first start, you have no help, no funding, because you only get the funding when you win. If you win, you know, competitions or matches, as an athlete, you have to prove you are a good athlete. So the moment you are part of that sporting elite, you get some funding. And in the Paralympic world in Spain, athletes are given consistent revenue or an income by the committee, the national committee. You are given a grant so that you can do this professionally. But it's only the top three the medalists that can work on their sporting career 100% of their life, if you know what I mean. So you have to be top of the class, absolutely, an elite athlete. And as you surely know, it's really hard to stay in an elite, top class for many years. I've done so for many years, but making a living out of it only since 2016. So it's really hard.
I have been in European championships, world championships, but making a living out of sports since 2016 only. And regarding sponsors, you said sponsors, it is difficult. It is complex. I will be brief. When you have a disability that is visible, it's easy. I mean, it may happen to you or me. I have a visual disability. I can see no one in this room, but you see me as someone without disability. But if I just had one leg, one arm, or with a guide dog, it's very easy to sell my story. And many brands want to sell your image as a reference. But those who have visual disability is much more difficult, or hearing disability, even worse, because you do not have the visibility of Paralympic Games, something that I don't understand, I will never understand, but hearing disability is not present in Paralympic Games. They are out of the federations. Something that is incomprehensible. Down syndrome, the same. For athletes, it is an additional category, but it is not included in the Paralympic Games. Things that I don't understand, but it's a different issue altogether. I think there is another question. Like, yeah, it's a very interesting discussion.
Be concise. I have 3 points. My name is David Lysa. I set up a social media channel for para sports, starting in para dressage so leg up ability. And I have 3 points, one for Hector and Santiago. First of all, to back up Hector, I talked to a lot of elite para dressage riders, and they all say the exact same thing. They want to be recognized for winning gold, for doing a good dressage test, or even doing a bad dressage test. That's what they want to be recognized for. Secondly, in terms of social media, I get you. There is a problem with social media, particularly now in horse riding competitions, FEI competitions. In order to protect both riders and riders with disabilities, they have came out with new social media rules, which effectively means me as a freelance influencer with my social media channel, I can't do that anymore because the FBI have put restrictions on what I can film, and that means it makes it unprofitability or unrealistic for me to go to competitions anymore because I can't film the cast. Now, my third point, San Diego, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. You made a great point about audience. We do need an audience. And if we don't have an audience, then our news, no matter how good it is, it doesn't reach anyone. There's no point to it. So maybe instead of trying to be inclusive to embracing all the general audience, maybe we should start focusing our audience on the people who matter, people with disabilities who want to inspire to be like Hector or other Paralympians. Maybe we should focus on that audience.
The question,
Okay.
Rebecca, we have the question.
No sé lo que me ha dicho. Es que ha comentado varias cosas, pero
Sí.
para no equivocarme.
He talked about several things. I understood he was asking me about the Paralympic world, but I didn't understand all the questions. Oh, it was rather a comment on several points rather than questions. It was a set of comments.
Ask Hector and Santi.
Should we focus on getting our audience? How do we get our audience? Should we focus our audience? Yes, in regards to.
Should we be trying to tell everybody about inclusive sports, or should we be focusing on certain audiences?
Okay, but this question is for Santi, really?
¿Qué-
Para todos, vale.
qué es la pregunta?
Si tú eres más de enfocarte en un deporte concreto o más
You'd rather focus on a specific sport or what I understood that he is asking, he said that we are focusing on the audience, and he's concerned by the fact that we depend on the audience. Should we focus on the general audience or specific disabled people as an audience? In my case, I want to focus on the general audience and not just one part of the people who can listen to me. As a journalist, I want to reach everyone. We have a kind of audience due to the kind of program. I focus on football, both inclusive football and non-inclusive. 90% is football in my job. But of my audience, not all audience likes football. We have a product that makes people who don't like football to see our program. And with inclusive sport, the aim is the same. People who have nothing to do with inclusive sport to have an attractive product and pay attention to what you are saying. So you cannot try your program to just focus on people that are disabled, and it would make no sense. It's what Fernando said before. I think that a key word is commitment. Commitment is key. If I am committed, because I want not only my program to be heard, but also to be valued, and I have this commitment. In my case, I have personal commitment because I am his friend. But if I weren't, I would have professional commitment because I cooperate with the Espurna Foundation. And in neither case, my product would be different to what it is now. So I would have to achieve the media to be able to transmit with passion what they do. I don't know if I have answered. Both, I would say, but it also depends on the position you take. For example, from España Se Mueve, we have a network of media. We have television, radio, we have press, written, printed press, as well as media, social media. So we work with all of them, but it also depends on the players you play with, you interact with. If on top of generating general content, you work with the different players that develop their activity in the field of inclusion and sport, it is easy to work with specific audiences. I can develop content for managers, for athletes with intellectual disability, or for the entities that work in the framework of intellectual or physical disability. So it would depend on your position and your resources. And if you can do everything, as Santi, Hector, and Tony said, there is a commitment that you need to promote on a personal level. I have a personal case. When I had my communication team, I could focus on sports, javelin or athletics, but it wasn't so, because then you realize with many sports people around, elite athletes, 80%, 70%, 80% of their content in the social media or on the press, etc., 70% of their content is not referred to their own sport. It encompasses many different aspects in order to reach out to a wider audience that wouldn't look for Hector Cabrera without his advertisement with a bottle of oil or a car or any other advertising campaign. As Santi said at the beginning, when we had this pandemic, I was training in my garden and I was shooting balls, and it became viral because I continued training and they didn't talk about sport, but how you could do sport or keep in touch with your family. And I included many people, families that weren't interested in sport or people who weren't interested in athletics. I would also add that it depends on your niche, because there are very small niches and you need to go to the general audience in order to have a repercussions in this niche. We have no time. Thank you very much. It has been very interesting. Thank you. I will give the floor to Richard, who is going to close this session. Thank you very much to all of you.
So the attitude of journalists. Santiago, you're a great example of a journalist with the right attitude. Hopefully there are more like you out there. But also the attitude of our audience needs to change to be more interested in these sorts of news stories. Organizations are responsible for creating news, and that should look at life stories, people's stories, but that shouldn't just focus on disability. It should also focus on achievement and what's been achieved. With increased visibility, it's also increased pressure. And so this should be considered with athletes of what that can mean for their life moving forward. And I would just like to say thank you all for coming. The next part of this event will be moving on to the beach. So if you look on the app, you will find more information. We'll be having an inclusive rugby training that we're looking forward to, and then some drinks. So hopefully you enjoy. And a big thank you to our interpreters and to our AV team. Thank you very much. Bye.